This is a conversation with Ron Rambo Kim, the FPS coach himself. And in this conversation, we talk about his career as a professional esports player, his time professionally coaching teams like Cloud9, MVP, and Complexity, as well as his best advice for how to become a better FPS player. Now, quite honestly, there's not a lot I need to say to preface this conversation. A lot of the value and interesting things are packed within it, so watch it carefully, consider even taking notes. And I hope you guys learn a lot from this conversation, and I hope it leaves you feeling as inspired as it left me feeling. So, without further ado, here's the FPS coach himself. If you were to give someone a rundown of who you are and what you do in esports, where would you start?
Sure. I guess we could just start with my playing career. I used to be a professional Counter-Strike player. So in 1998, my dad got me my first computer. Was immediately hooked to Counter-Strike and PC games. Made a team with my local high school friends, and we started competing in tournaments. We started winning our local events, started competing online. And then there's actual tournaments happening. So big qualifiers, international events. Surrounded myself with some of the best NA players at the time, and played for a team called Team 3D for about 7 years, full time, day in day out, traveling the world, literally dream job. Got to do that. So, and then after about 7 years, decided to retire. Got into esports marketing for about 3 years. And I had the itch for competition again. So that's when I decided to move to Korea to become a coach. So I coached Team MVP, their Counter-Strike team, and then coached Complexity and Cloud9 for 2 years after that. And then I started a YouTube channel a couple years ago under FPS coach, Ron Rambo Kim, where I teach gamers everything I learned from my FPS career to help them get better.
Awesome. That's pretty succinct. And I want to dive into each step of that career because I think each of those is pretty interesting. But to be fair, I think the best place to start is right at the start. I think a lot of people who are passionate about esports and gaming, there's a difference between surface level passion and full on commitment. And I think a lot of that commitment starts with pretty young, maybe with a certain level of history within gaming where there's just like a pure passion and love. And I'm curious where you think your passion and love for gaming originated for you.
Well, the first time I ever put my hands on a video game was Nintendo. My dad got me Nintendo, and I think it was at the age of 4. And I remember in one day I got to the last level. It's weird. I don't remember if I beat it or not, but I remember getting to it because I remember the lava and everything. So I always loved video games. I loved figuring them out. Um, Even as a young kid, my parents on the weekends would go to the farmers market, and to keep me entertained, they gave me some quarters. So they gave me a pocket full of quarters, and I would go to the arcade, and um, I was more gravitated towards the multiplayer aspect. So play versus other people. So I was competitive in nature. I played soccer, I played hockey, and then yeah, so that was just kind of innately in me. And then when generally for me, I kind of have I don't know if you an obsessive personality in a way where if I like something, I'm pretty much all in. So whether it's a recreation, a hobby, it could be golf, it could be starting an aquarium, whatever it is, I want to learn everything about it. And then you mix that in with the element of competition.
Yeah.
I think that was, those are two perfect kind of pieces. And then, once I knew we could make money and we could travel, it was I knew I was hooked. There was nothing else I wanted to do.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty inspiring start, and I'm curious to dig into, I guess, you grew up at a certain age. How old were you when you went to your first esports tournaments, like LAN events?
I think I was 16 or 17. I was a senior in high school. I was with I didn't at that time I didn't have a really good computer, but my best friend in high school, Bobby, shout out to you, Bobby. He used to let me land at his house, so we would play over there. And then there was lucky for us, we lived in Dallas, or I still live in Dallas.
Yep.
But there's this event called QuakeCon, And at the time, it was the biggest gaming event in the world, I believe, maybe next to DreamHack in Sweden. So everyone in the nation would come down. It was a huge LAN party, and there was like, 500 to 1,000 people. So that's where I got my first taste of competition. And during the LAN and BYLCs, I figured out I was pretty decent. So that was even more inspiration for me.
I had read somewhere that I don't know if it was your first tournament, but one of your first tournaments, you ended up winning like a pretty significant amount of prize money, right?
The first LAN competition, it was in Counter-Strike beta. It was at the QuakeCon.
Yeah.
So the Quake was the actual official tournament, but in the LAN BYOC, it was Counter-Strike, and it was a 64-person one-on-one on this map called CS Mansion. So I ended up playing my high school friend in it, won it, won like a $300 graphics card at the time.
Nice.
So it was a huge upgrade for me. Yeah, so that was
That,
my first official winning.
that'd be so motivating. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, so it's like, winning little tournaments here and there. Would go to lands on the weekend. There'd be like, $20 entry per person, and then
Yeah.
we'd end up winning like $100 each. So,
Nice.
um, yeah, just, using that money for upgrades and gas money, travel around and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then in what was it? It was 2002. You ended up being one of the founding members of the first salaried North American esports team. Was that like a big step at the time for just esports in general, or did you not really think of it that way, or what was that experience like, I guess?
Yeah, it was huge. I remember K Sharp, my teammate. He told us about this guy named Craig Levine, and he reached out to us and he said, "Hey, this guy wants to like be our manager and find us sponsors. He's gonna get us jerseys and stuff." And we're just like, "Okay, whatever. Yeah, sure, let's do it." And it ended up being his name's Torble. I believe he's like the president of ESL, like operating officer or something. So he's like one of the big dogs now. But back then, we had no clue who he was. He was just some random guy from New York. And we're like, sure, let's do it. We get free stuff. He ended up being probably arguably one of the best esports managers of all time. He landed us huge sponsors like Intel, CompUSA, NVIDIA, Subway. So we were getting like
Wow.
free Subway meals, and all our trips and stuff were paid for. And then, yeah, we're getting, at the time, the biggest salary. So with that, we're able to focus full time. And a
Yeah.
huge reason why we were so good because, we didn't have to work. We could play, 40, 50 hours a week.
Wow. And was that uncommon at the time?
Very uncommon, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was barely any tournaments. There was no structure. There was no like, there was nothing. It was brand new industry. Like there was no esports industry before, no established orgs, leagues, So, yeah, it was unheard of. We were just at the time just kind of going with it. And again, I mean, Craig, huge. He took care of everything out of the game. So, um, that the outside of the game sponsorship stuff I didn't really know about.
Mm.
I was just happy that I got paid, and all our food and travel and hotels were taken care of so we can compete.
And during all of this time, what did your parents think of your gaming?
Yeah, so I'm super lucky that I have parents that supported me. Generally, with Asian parents, it's not you don't get that stroke of luck. So they supported me. They always have. They always let me do what made me happy. Um, so yeah, it was kind of a weird transitional moment too, because I had graduated high school. Um, I had failed economics. I had to go back and take it for summer school so I could get my degree.
Yeah.
That's how much I sucked at school and I hated it. Um, but luckily, I was pretty good at video games. So after, like, I was supposed to go to community college. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life after high school. But we ended up winning a qualifier to go to New York. And we won that qualifiers for a WCG to represent America in Korea. So
Mm.
this was like 17 and a half right out of high school. And then we went to Korea, and we did pretty good there. And then that's when Craig noticed us, and that's
Uh,
where we got sponsors. So
nice.
if it wasn't for that event, I don't know if my parents would have given me the chance, but they
Yeah.
saw that I could, actually got everything paid for. I went to Korea, which was like my motherland,
Yeah.
a crazy experience. So definitely lucky in that aspect.
Wow. That's so crazy. It feels like, or it sounds like there's a big mix of skill, or a big mix of luck in there. But on the skill side of things, what do you think it was that you and your team had that other teams didn't have that allowed you to succeed at that time?
Yeah, I think I always say like one of the luckiest things is finding teammates that all blend together well. In a team game, you have to have the chemistry both in and out of the game, right? Like personalities have to match, the roles
Mhm.
have to not overlap. Um, so definitely got lucky there. Kind of what happened was as I was competing and playing, I started to figure out who the better players in North America were because we would constantly play versus each other in scrims or in finals or in matches, and those are the people that I knew I wanted to be with if we were going to be the best in the world.
Yeah.
So slowly we started, piecing a core together. Um, K Sharp, at the time, Bullseye, Bodo, um, Big Dog, Chameleon. So there's all these players, just trying to surround ourselves with the best. And when you kind of have a core of players, it's a lot easier to pick up other players,
Yeah.
right? Because it's more enticing that way. So
Yeah.
in that aspect, we're lucky because we're able to attract the best talent and always have a lineup that can compete internationally.
Nice. Nice. And then it was, I guess, in 2007 that you joined Complexity, and that was what, like, I think I'd also read that you started like playing on like television and stuff like that. Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so 2007, there was this gaming organization developed by DirecTV called the Championship Gaming Series.
Yeah.
And at the time, that's when Counter-Strike Source came out. So there was this transitional moment, and whilst 1.6 was still huge, so CGS wanted to use Counter-Strike Source because it looked better on TV.
Yeah.
And so what their whole kind of concept was is they wanted to create city franchises. So
Yeah.
they would have like Los Angeles Complexity, 3D New York, Dallas, East Coast. They had like 8 cities. And then each city you'd have like I think there was like 4 or 5 games. And so they would have a Counter-Strike team, a fighting game team, a racing game team, and we all lived in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
For so they would pay. We lived in Marina Del Rey, which is one of like the coolest places um, to live in LA. I was like right by the beach. We lived in like luxury apartments. We had
Nice.
the biggest salary of all time at that point. So it was like we made it.
Yeah.
This was heaven. But unfortunately, there was just I think they were too ahead of their time.
Yeah.
So we got to compete in 2 full seasons of that.
Yeah.
Amazing experience, but it was short lived. Um, but yeah, it was a cool experience.
And at the end of that, when after those 2 years, what happened from there?
From there, I got back into 1.6 a little bit, played for about a season or so, but that's when it was definitely at the tail end of my um, competitive drive. I
Yeah.
just been competing nonstop for about 7, 8 years, so that's when I decided, to hang up the keyboard, and I just didn't have the drive to practice anymore. So from there, I got into working in the esports industry.
Yeah.
So I did a whole bunch of contractor work, went to a whole bunch of events, and that's when I got into marketing.
Did you enjoy the transition into the corporate world? And I asked that from a point where like a lot of people who are younger and interested in esports probably don't like the idea of like what happens after their career. Was it like a negative thing for you to transition into corporate, or was it actually like more enjoyable because you're doing something new?
Yeah, it was definitely by choice, and it was interesting because it was new. I had never worked a real job before, showing up to an office, um, getting salary, and working with different departments and other, people, like, and yeah, like, in marketing departments and other divisions. But yeah, I did that for about 3 years. I started with customer support, um, and then I worked my way to running the esports marketing. So this was for BenQ, with Zowie. So it was an invaluable experience. Since I didn't get a formal education, I felt like I got it through those 3 years,
Cool.
working through those different departments, working with different divisions, and just learning firsthand. So it was amazing.
I'm also curious how that opportunity came up for you. Did you see like a job posting somewhere? Did you know someone who worked there?
Yeah, so I met this guy named Bob Budek. He was the head marketing guy for BenQ. He's the one who actually like decided that BenQ should go into gaming. So I met him through some of the events, and he hired me.
Wow, that's really cool. And then it also saw that you did event specialist work. Was that like
Yeah, so that was right after CGS. That was a contract work. So working with this guy named Laurent. He's one of the OGs of esports. He has him and Craig had was working for it was a company called ESS Esports Services. So companies, venues, exhibitions, tournaments would hire them to help them set up and run events. So I went to like 15 or 20 MLGs, bunch of E3s, just some of the biggest gaming events in the nation. Um, and just, yeah, just, continuing to travel, go to gaming events. Um, yeah, it was cool.
and then I'm curious what at what point did you want to transition back into or transition into more of a coaching role? Like what inspired that decision?
Yeah, so after about 3 years in the corporate world, I felt like I got to a point where I wasn't really learning anymore, and I didn't really see a next step or progression that interested me. So, um, and then the other thing was that I always wanted to live in Korea, just kind of my heritage. So, I sent a message to one of my friends there named Ken Yang. Shout out to King, another OG. Asked him if there's any jobs, if he knows anyone. And he said, yeah, actually, there's this team MVP looking for a coach. So I was like, done. How do we do it? Um, I was there in 3 weeks. I had my working visa and I was
Huh.
living there. So, um, yeah, so that was in 2017, where I got to live in Korea for about a year.
Do you speak Korean fluently?
I mean, it's like second grader. Like when I
Fair.
talk, like I'll probably sound like an infant at times. So like I would speak the language over there, and they would just bust out laughing. Like, oh, I probably sound like a noob, uh, trying to chain together words. But yeah, I mean, it's enough to get around.
Did you live in Seoul or like a major city, or where did you
I
live?
lived I lived in a city called Incheon.
Oh,
It's just
Incheon. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the airport city when you come
Yeah,
in.
I spent most of 2020 in Seoul this year, so
Oh,
I'm very
nice.
familiar. Yeah,
What were
yeah.
you doing there?
I actually, so funny enough, I went there originally for some esports events that were happening, and then Corona took off about 3 days after I got there. So it was kind of this like weird thing where everyone was like stuck inside and no one was really going outside. And I was thinking like, should I just try to go home or not? I thought I'd wait it out. And then about a couple weeks later, everything was relatively contained there, but not back here where I live in Canada. So I was like, I just feel safer staying here. So all the events got canceled, but I just wanted to stay there because it felt safer. And I ended up just meeting a bunch of new friends. So I lived basically in Hongdae for about 6 months, and it was a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool area too.
Yeah, I
Um,
really liked it. I really liked it. And I learned so
yeah.
much about Korean culture, which was amazing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a very special place. I could definitely live there again. Um, yeah, it's very respectful people. Nightlife is fun. Food is great. Always
Yes.
something open, something to do.
Yeah.
And esports is, it's the birthplace of esports.
Yeah.
So a lot of cool events and shows to go to.
I'm actually curious what your thoughts are on, I guess, like you grew up in the North American esports scene. When you went there as a coach, what did you learn about the differences of how they treat esports versus us here? Is there a big difference or not necessarily?
The biggest difference for me was the relationship between older people and younger people.
Yeah.
So in Korea, naturally, the culture and language is actually designed to respect the elders.
Yeah.
So when you speak to an older person, you have to speak a certain way. So there's this automatic respect you have for elders. So, if I wanted something done, or if I, you know, had an idea or whatever it was no question that they were going to listen.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a lot more respect amongst each other too, I felt like. Maybe it's just the players I worked with. Maybe there's other, side cases, but just the interaction, yeah, between each other and the elders. So it was a lot more structured, disciplined. People would show up on time, no question. They're very self-motivated. Um, and, whereas here in America, there can be some players that may be a little bit lazier, um,
Mm.
not as self-disciplined, um, you know, kind of. So those kind of dynamics, yeah.
Okay. And that it sounds like that would make your first year in coaching a lot easier, but I'm curious to hear what the other side of that is. What do you think was like the hardest part of transitioning into a coaching role?
Yeah, so for me, there's two things easily. One is my Korean wasn't as good enough as I needed it be to coach. Um, as a coach, you have to be very selective with how you provide criticism, how you talk to players when they're down,
Hmm.
how to motivate them, how to talk strategy, how to break down demos. It's a very complex language that I couldn't do. So definitely limited in that.
Yeah.
The second thing is the coach's ability to understand each player um, as both in and out of the game. So you got to understand their personality type, how to communicate with them, um, the tone, the message, the timing,
Okay.
um, how they receive information. Like those kind of very unique understandings of each person was something that I'm still working on, and I definitely was new to back then.
Mm.
Because it's different having a relationship as a coach to a player than it was an IGL or a teammate. Like when I played professionally, I could communicate a way different way to a teammate than I can from a coach to a player.
Okay.
So yeah, just kind of learning that the social dynamics of being a coach.
That makes a lot of sense, and I imagine that changes quite a lot based on what team you're working with. So, like after that, you ended up coming back and coaching in America. You came back and coached for Complexity next. Was that yeah?
Mhm.
So I'm curious what inspired that decision to move back, and then yeah, we'll start with that. What inspired that decision?
Yeah, so at the end of 2017, Matt Warden, or Matt Dickens, his gamer name is Warden. Um, I used to compete with him, against him, and I also was a teammate with him in Complexity. So, very strong relationship with him. He was at that time, current head coach of Complexity, and he wanted to transition to the general manager role. So, he reached out to me and see if I was interested. And it actually ended up their headquarters was being moved to my home city of Dallas, like in Frisco. So that made perfect sense. It was, I could be back at home and be near my family, plus coaching such a, iconic esports organization like Complexity that I already played for. So it was a no-brainer.
Hmm.
And yeah.
That's fair. And then when you came back, did you feel like there was new learning curve to working with a brand new team, and how did you kind of overcome that learning curve?
Yeah, definitely a lot of things that I learned from Korea and coaching that team that I could bring to this new team. Definitely opening up the language barrier was huge. Um, and then also, just learning the meta a little bit more and having a stronger idea of competitive Counter-Strike from that first year, because that was kind of a introductory again into the scene because I'd been out for a while. So a
Mhm.
lot of good stuff I could bring over. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, all the players were super welcoming. Um, the whole org was good. So we were there. We had a little bit of roster tribulation, I guess, like kind of not instability is a better word, in the first 6 months or so.
Yeah.
But once we finally settled on a team that we could kind of commit to,
Hmm.
really dig down and develop, one of the best moments we had is we were able to go through the open qualifiers of a major. It was the Face It London major, and we had to qualify from the very first stage of open. So like with any other teams and players, and we ended up like over months of competition qualifiers, boot camps, we were able to make it to the eighth, top eight, at the Face It London Major, which is they have two of those a year. It was like the biggest event, so it was an amazing accomplishment in that short amount of time. So that was by far my best memory from that.
That's awesome. That must have been really exciting when that happened.
Yeah, it was crazy. Because when you're standing there on the stage out of a major, and the crowd there, it was packed full. It was at it's like what the it was at a huge stadium in London, and it was absolutely packed. And I've never been with that kind of energy and that kind of that many fans
Yeah.
before. Like when I would compete, it was much smaller. So this was a whole new thing. It was a crazy experience, considering just the journey we went through, and all the ups and downs and all the grinding and stuff. But to say we got top eight in one of the biggest events of the year, with a team that hadn't been together for too long, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it was super cool.
What do you think was maybe the reason for that success? Because I imagine that's hard with like a new team. Like what do you think that maybe you and other people did to help bring that team together and to do so well?
I think definitely a big piece of that was Matt Warden, our general manager. He was pretty much the glue of our team. He's really good at what he does, very personable person. Um, Before we went to the first stage of the Face It London major qualifiers, we were boot camping in Germany for 2 weeks to play versus the European teams and just get in shape. And it ended up being like the most like it was traumatic. Like we were getting destroyed, like absolutely destroyed. It was so demoralizing. Um, and we're like, when you're preparing for the big event, you're waking up every day, playing for 6, 8 hours, and just getting trashed every day,
Yeah.
every day. It was very so at that point, it's like we're at an all-time low.
Right.
But when we actually went to London to start the first stage, um, I think there's like this whole new energy. It was kind of maybe like it felt like we had nothing to lose, kind of like
Yeah.
we didn't have any hopes. We're just like we're just gonna do the best we can, right? Like, and I think maybe because we got trashed. Well, one, we learned a ton.
Right.
We like through all those trash errors, we still like stuck to our plan. We did our analysis, talked
Yep.
about what we could fix. So in that period, we were actually prepared us more than anything else. So with that attitude, we went to the first stage. I think we went 3-1. Our first match was versus Astralis, which
Yeah.
was literally the best team in the world. At that time, they were on a tear, so it was like whatever. We're supposed to lose.
Right.
But after that, we actually we won three in a row, which qualified us through the first stage. So it's just
Wow.
like we found some momentum, we carried it, we beat some really big teams there. And then the second stage, we carried that momentum. I think we also went, pretty sure we went undefeated. So we ended up beating like six of the best, 16 teams in the world
Wow.
somehow, with some crazy momentum, um, which, yeah, was awesome.
It's amazing. That's so cool. And then I guess after that you ended up going to Cloud9, right?
Yeah, I went to Cloud9. Um, Went to Cloud9 after a year with Complexity. Um, Moved to LA. Um, and then also at that time, Cloud9 was going through some roster issues after the major. So, there's a lot of kind of ups and downs with the roster. It's always a tough thing to develop a team when you pick up someone new and then you have to teach that person everything again. So you're kind of like, you have to take a couple steps back. So the team actually doesn't progress. It's more of just like a catch up period.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah, I got to work with some world class like Hall of Fame players. Um, Automatic, he was on there. Flusha, um, Kiyoshima, Rush was on there. So like major winners, like big time players. So
Yeah.
great learning experience for me as a coach. Um, and yeah, we attended one major, but unfortunately, because of the roster issues, like we had to use a sub, which took up a coaching role. So I
Yeah.
couldn't actually help them on stage with the coach, which sucks. But yeah, it was about 6, 7 months I was with him. Learned a ton, and I was glad for the happy for the experience.
What do you feel like through your coaching experience? What do you think that you learned that you would want to either like teach yourself on your first year of coaching or teach like another coach in their first year of coaching? Like what key lesson would you want to give to them?
Um, well, I think just in general, you should try to be real with what your weaknesses are or where you can improve upon. So if you could, I would say in two high umbrella categories, in and out of game. So how can you develop yourself in game to understand the strats, the meta? Um, how can I help my team develop in the shortest amount of time? Like how do we use the schedule? What's the philosophy and systems we use? Um, in that aspects, and then there's the out of game stuff. So how can I better myself as a you know not only a coach, but as a friend, as a mentor. How do I work on my skills to be a better teacher? Um, yeah, so kind of like really high level stuff, but has the most impact because it's a lot of the day to day stuff. So but yeah, that's what I would say.
Did you have any like resources, books, or mentors that helped you learn the skills of coaching?
Um, yeah, I have a couple books on my Kindle. Um, there's a Championship Mind. Um, see, I'm really bad with memory, or like memorizing specific stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I was watching YouTube videos, watching interviews, podcasts, just trying to learn from experts.
Yeah.
It's difficult for me to like remember exact things like quotes and books and names, um, but it's in there. It's in my brain somewhere. So like, I just feel like once I attain that information, do my best to retain it. Kind of something I can apply.
Yeah.
So it's just a constant pursuit of expanding that knowledge base, whether it's like tips, tricks, techniques, philosophy systems, perspectives, ideas,
Yeah.
and then applying it appropriately depending on the situation or the person.
That makes sense. And then you transitioned from coaching to like what was your next step when you finished coaching? Was that immediately starting the YouTube, or what was like the what happened right after you ended it with Cloud9?
Yeah, so it was a weird period in my life. It was definitely like an existential moment. It's like, what do I want to do with my life? Like I had been released with them. It was kind of some weird things I don't want to get to, but it was kind of like an awkward circumstance. But then I was like, I had coached the I guess probably the most popular esports org in NA, maybe the world. Like they had won esports org of the year before
Yeah.
that. So it was like I had reached the mountain in terms of that. So I was like, there wasn't really any other team that I wanted to coach, or an org. So it was just like, what do I want to do with my life? So it was definitely a little bit challenging, a little bit dark period for a couple of months. Um, Kind of resetting my mind and new objectives and what I want to do, what's my purpose and all that. And then I've always wanted I mean, I had a passion for teaching. I love video games. I like trying to help people. So I thought it was a perfect moment to transition into YouTube. Um, it was something that I always wanted to do, even when I was a pro player. Like I was giving lessons on the side and stuff, and I always wanted to make my own website. So like I had a site, I had a forum and stuff, but never really pulled the trigger. Um, but yeah, so after I thought I would start a YouTube channel. I didn't know any idea of how the process of creating videos, recording. Um, oh, actually, you know what? It was like but right before I started the YouTube channel, I wanted to write a book.
Okay.
So I wanted to write a book of all the FPS fundamentals.
Okay.
So instead of video format, it was a book.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 3 months straight. Just
Wow.
like wake up, sleep, write, edit. Very, very tough period. Writing is a book is one of the most difficult things.
Could imagine.
It's so mentally taxing. It's not anything fun at all. Because there's such a demand of like when you put words down and you try to teach someone, you can only put it down once, right? Like once you
Right.
choose a sentence or whatever way of teaching it, that's it, and it's cemented. So it could be very yeah. There's a lot of kind of rewrites and edits and doubting and stuff. But
Yeah.
so once that was complete, I was reaching out to book publishers, make it a real deal. And then I had a phone call with one of my mentors, Tahan, and he through that conversation he kind of just dawned on me that it would be much better to share this information in video content. I
Yeah.
think our generation, our community, just how big videos are, right?
Yeah.
So that's when I just transitioned all that book content into video content into YouTube. So a lot of those early videos, even some of the videos I'm making now, are just straight from the book
Wow.
into video format.
Wow. Do you know how like how many pages that book would have been? Like how long it was?
Mm, I think it was around like 30 pages, 32. Um, yeah, it was about 32 pages. But the cool thing with video content is it's much, not only is it easier to absorb, but because it's real time and it's like animations and graphics, there's a lot more I can compact into a shorter period of time.
Right.
Whereas a book, you have to read it and then you only have still images.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
definitely glad I went the video route.
And then I saw you also relatively recently launched a course on your website. Did a lot of the material from the book go into that course?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, out of all the lessons I've given, um, by far the biggest question is how do I better my aim?
Yep.
How do I find my sensitivity? How do I know my right grip or yada, right? So, I always was seeing the same questions. So I decided to make a course on it. So, yeah, it's everything that like all the techniques and drills and stuff I've learned as a pro player and as a coach and with my from my teammates and the research and stuff I've done from videos. It's all in there. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, all the fundamentals from like how do you know or how do you buy equipment, how do you set up the equipment, the settings,
Yep.
the fundamentals of like how to position your body, like your biomechanics, your forearm, wrist, grip, and the various aiming motions that's needed for FPS games,
Mhm.
like flicking, swiping, vertical. So it's built in a way where like if you're a brand new beginner, you could
Mhm.
start with page one, and it would teach you okay the stuff you need, how to set it up, how to use your body, how to find your sense, warm up stuff, and it gets more into advanced stuff like peaking techniques, learning maps and angles, and that kind of stuff.
Awesome, man. I actually when I saw that you had you made like a video mentioning the course, I was instantly inspired, and I personally kind of suck with mouse and keyboard for aiming. I used to be a console FPS player most of my life, but recently I've been inspired to try and improve that. So I think I might end up getting your course actually, just to see what it's all about. It looks I trust you as a coach and a teacher, so yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll hook you up. I'll hook you up with a free one.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I'd
Yeah, yeah.
appreciate that. And then I was curious. I also saw, I think it was on your Twitter, you're working with Statespace. So what's going on there? How did that opportunity come up, and what do you do with them?
Yeah, so Statespace Labs, they are based in New York. They one of their products that they're creating is called AimLab. and it's a free aim training program for PC FPS gamers.
Hmm.
Um, so during the creation of my course, I wanted to use AimLab in some of the chapters to help people practice their aiming motions with the program.
Hmm.
So I met with their CEO, Statespace, Wayne, and we hit it off. It was just like we had a conversation. It turned into an hour and a half, just talking about all kinds of stuff. So definitely just clicked, and talked about our future kind of ambitions, what we want to work on, and it aligned perfectly. Like we both love the pursuit of trying to help people get better, um, in video games or just in general. So using our platforms to make that kind of positive influence. So yeah, I love what they're doing, the projects they're working on, and I joined them about a month ago, and I've been loving every minute of it.
So what is it specifically that you do with them?
Yeah, there's a bunch of projects. One is just trying to help uh, better and optimize the AIM lab.
Okay.
So creating new training tasks or modes.
Hmm.
We've got some other things I can't mention, some big things,
Sure.
but just trying to improve the product from my perspective as a pro player. And then there's some other things too, other programs and projects outside of AimLab
Yep.
that we're expanding upon. So it's it got a pretty secretive, but as of
Okay.
now,
That's
but
okay.
we'll be releasing some big things soon.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw on their website they have, I think there's like three project sections and two are like coming soon. So yeah, I'm excited to see it because it sounds or it seems like they are very big on collecting data and trying to use analytics to help better people. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that, at least in FPS skills and actually all of esports, to be fair. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's been there now for a month and learning who's on the team. I mean, over half the people, if not more, all have PhDs and doctorates in neuroscience or psychology or programming or scientists. So just insanely smart, talented people in all kinds of industries. So working together and collaborating to figure out how we can help gamers beyond just simple mechanics and aim. Um, but yeah, so a heavy emphasis on collecting data, analyzing it, and how we can use that to help people or create certain values from that. I think that's the cool and innovative part about being with State Space.
That's super cool. That's super cool. Um, and then I guess I'm gonna end up digging in a bit about just general questions around aim. A lot of the things that I had like originally messaged you on Discord about. But before I get into that, since we're kind of like wrapping up what I had as like the career section for you, if if you were to think back to your career, from being a player to being a coach to working in corporate, and let's say that there's like someone who's 16 years old who's really highly skilled, they're thinking about pursuing esports, whether it's any of those avenues, what advice would you want to give to that person that might help them avoid some obstacles or might motivate them towards that career?
So like the career path of like an actual player, pro player.
Yeah, we could start with player.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many new jobs now in the esports industry. Even like the traditional jobs are now are developing in esports. Like social media, graphics design, video, partnerships. You know, so many, right? But in terms of like a pro player, if you're 16, um, I mean, the first thing is that it's even more competitive now than ever before. So there is no getting around that you have to put the hours in and the time. Like any other competitive sport, there's no shortcut. So you got to put the hours in, but you should try to do it smart. So just grinding pub games or grinding games day in, day out, it's one way to do it, but you could be more efficient. So I would say try to develop a routine to provide some balance in your life.
Mhm.
So if you have schoolwork or whatever chores or errands, try to fit that in and try to structure your day where um, you're able to block out times for practice, but then taking care of other stuff you need. Um, so, for example, like, if you know you have 5 days a week to play and you have X amount of hours, well, kind of plan that out ahead of time. So that way you could be like, okay, I know I'm going to practice from like 6 to 9 o'clock or something, or 5 to 9. I could really kind of take care of what I need to before then, so I could really focus on those 4 hours. So, maybe I'll take a nap before that time to make sure I'm focused, or I'll have dinner before so I can sustain myself through those 4 hours. So I'm not,
Mm.
taking a break and my team has to miss practice. Or um, I would say, yeah, and then try to put in some amount of time to stretching and taking care of your body. Because, like, take it from me, like, I still have like a kind of a right shoulder, like tear or ligament thing, because I was playing with such rolled forward shoulders and not doing posture exercise and fixing myself. So I was doing all this damage over time that I didn't know about. So you got to balance all that sitting and bad posture if you do. So yeah, I'll say figure out a schedule, find some kind of routine. Also, what that helps you do is, like, let's say you practice those 4 hours a night, 5 to 9 or whatever. Your circadian rhythm will also prepare for that. So instead of waking up at 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock and 10 o'clock, it's just this
Yeah.
fluctuations every day. That's very difficult to have any kind of consistency to know when your focus level is at its max. So you kind of want to fit in that practice schedule where you feel like you're most focused,
Mm.
and not play when you're at 50% energy or focus.
Right.
It's actually could be detrimental,
Yeah.
might go backwards. So I would say think about the structure a little bit more in a routine.
That's really good advice. I like that. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of sleep. I'm kind of crazy about my sleep, so I think that's a key point too, is getting your circadian balance right, circadian rhythm right, and also I think it's important that some people are like morning people, some people are night people. It's just for different chronotypes. I think that's another little tip that I always mention to people, is try to figure out like when you're at your maximal focus, and I guess like add that into your routine, like plan around that. Um, yeah, a lot of it is just understanding sleep, and I'm curious to dig into sleep a little bit after, but yeah, I think that's a good point to like add a timestamp to.
Yeah, well, I mean, sleep is directly proportional to how well you're focused. Like, for me, one of the worst feelings in the world is when I feel tired.
Yeah.
And if I got crap sleep and I wake up and my whole day is groggy. It's cloudy. I can't focus. I can't think. It's one of the worst things. So
Yeah.
yeah, sleep is precious. It sets your whole day up for success. Um, yeah. And then the second thing I want to mention, kind of to like the young guns out there, just any ages. Um, just a quick thing. I mean, like, there's so many resources out there to get better, especially demos and VODs. So being able to sit down and really watch the best pros and analyze them and figure out what they're doing right, where you can see yourself. Like, if you see the end goal, it helps you get there. So
Mm.
observe all these different types of pro players and different play styles, and it'll expand your mind and your gameplay. You'll find new timings, new positions, new ways, things you've never thought of before. So you can just rip them or copy them.
Yeah.
The second thing is like, um, you want to be a person that your teammates will like recommend, or speak highly of.
Yeah.
If you play a team game, it's like networking and having that kind of voucher where any teammate can say, "Oh yeah, he was a great teammate. He didn't have an ego. He showed up on time." Um, I would recommend to enemy team. Like, if you can build that kind of resume and personality, it'll
Mm.
help you find teams much easier. But also, if you do get to that semi-pro level, those are what the orgs and players and in-game leaders are looking for. They're looking for those players that are willing to take criticism, that have a student mentality, that sponsor will be proud to sponsor, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're going to be putting on a jersey and representing huge org sponsors. You got to be a person that they've got to trust to represent them well.
Mhm.
So you got to have development both in game, but also as a person out of game, as a teammate and as someone that can be a professional athlete and
Mm.
play on stage and play on stream and rep all these companies and orgs well.
Do you think to develop that, it just is kind of like a mindset shift that people need to start identifying where they're maybe a little bit toxic or where they get tilted too much? Like, is it start with identifying their negatives and kind of work back from there?
Definitely, I think it takes some self introspective ness, like 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 the pursuit of being a little bit more self-aware and being real with yourself. And um, once you're aware, then it helps you kind of work on it. And it's difficult. It's not easy because some people, through their upbringing or environment or parents or friends or whatever, it's different for everyone. So some people, like me, I had it super easy. I got super lucky with my parents, my upbringing. It was like perfect kind of setup for me. So whereas other people, it's not that easy. So um, um, I don't have like a one answer for all, but I think if you if you do at least try and put in some effort, it'll eventually get there, right? And just the big thing is just trying to shed the ego. The ego is such a killer for young gamers that try to get at the top level, but they never can because they can never find a team to stay with. They it's just when it's always just about them. So whether that's you're trying to show off or maybe they're uh, just have problems working. Yeah, so it's the ego. Um, I wish I had something profound to say right now, but that was a huge thing for me, um, and I see in young people. So just try to work on not thinking so much about you, but how you can help the team, how you could be a better influence overall externally.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of players who are kind of on the rise in a sense are always worried about looking bad themselves. They don't want to take the blame because they think that it hurts their career. But I think a lot of the times it's the opposite. It's worrying too much about themselves that causes the most damage. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like if you have a team first mentality instead of a me first mentality, that's one of the first steps, Like if I make a mistake and I say, sorry guys, I messed up, that's probably the best thing you could say. But if you say, oh, if you blame someone else, like, why'd you, peak? You shouldn't have peaked, or I died because of whatever, because of John. But yeah, if you just say, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, like it's over, like it's done. That it's, so it's kind of like a small, you could go either the route of the ego or you could go for team first mentality. And if you kind of gradually kind of shift towards the team a little bit more and more and more and more, um, eventually, you'll eventually work yourself into being like that teammate that everyone wants to play with.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Kind of like a side tangent. I also saw that I think it was this summer, you did like a Valorant boot camp, right? Um,
Yeah.
how did you kind of establish like a team thing with completely new players who weren't even together physically?
Yeah, so I was running these like week-long boot camps to my community or whoever wanted to join. So I would have this Google Docs form where people would submit with their information, their age, location, skill level, the roles they played, where they like to play on offense and defense on all the maps. So I had all this information of all these players, and then I would find the 5 best players that I felt like would match together well. So no overlapping positions, generally in the same skill range.
Mhm.
And then I would create strats for them. And I would teach them defaults and how to play the game as like a structured team. So, I would spend a few days, I would do one-on-one lessons with them, prepare them for their role and job. And
Mhm.
then we would get together as a team. And like the second, third day, I would go over all the strats and the systems and positions we would play. And then we would actually scrim. So I would just really compact my coaching philosophy into a week and prepare them for, scrims or matches on the weekend.
Yeah.
So we'd play each day, we would talk about the strats, what we want to do, and then we would scrim that map all night. Then I would provide feedback with VOD analysis and stuff. And yeah, we'd do that for 4 nights on all 4 maps, and really try to compact as much competitive, structured team experience as much as I could, because I know that's something that gamers have trouble, um, or not trouble, but they're just not able to do, because it is so difficult to find a team and get to a point where you can, play that structured style. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Very cool. Do you feel like all those players who you taught are kind of like on a completely new level now?
Well, it, oh, I mean, it it was an eye-opening experience for them, because again, they never got to play that team experience.
Yeah.
And some of the cool things is, one of my boot camps, we had like average silver players, like low gold. By the end of the weekend, we're beating like immortal teams.
Wow.
So them able to get the glimpse and taste of like, it's not individual skill level. It's about how you play as a team,
Right.
and how are you you know how you can complement each other, and how you have setups and everyone's on the same page. How powerful that can be.
Mhm.
So that's the coolest part for me, is being able to show them that and have them experience that. Yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome. Um, I'd like to dig into kind of just aspects of aim training, how to improve aim, because that's a topic that I want to cover in some upcoming videos on our channel. But the first thing that I'm curious about is if you think something like aiming skill is largely about just hard work or genetics, and where you think the that kind of balance lies.
I think there's definitely a natural element of hand-eye coordination. Some people are just more coordinated, more athletic, um, while other people may be more, their strengths are more on the creative side or analytical side. So like everyone naturally genetically has their own strengths and weaknesses. Um, I think I mean, how much time and thought you put into something too will impact your improvement rate. So if someone is, the most important thing to them is getting good at aiming, they'll figure out a way. They'll put the hours in, and they'll put all that problem solving and brain focus and energy into it. Where other people are just casual. There's not, it's not a big thing. They just want to play, so
Yeah.
they're not going to get that return. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, essentially, aiming is, well, there's a lot of things to aiming, but let's just say like the base roots of aiming is being able to aim the crosshair with the mouse. So that, just baseline, that's what the definition is, right? Like, how do I move this mouse to aim the crosshair where I want on the map? So, but aiming is a lot more complex than that. Like, it's positioning, it's putting yourself in advantageous angles, timing. There's movement involved. Um, there's game sense, all kinds of things, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think something that I mentioned in my course is that most things that people are overlooking is how influential their body positions are, or their body alignments are.
Yeah.
So their posture, the angle of their forearm, how much of the forearm is on the table, the grip style, um, like just physically aligning and positioning yourself. The body influences how you use the mouse, right?
Right.
So those, like a basketball player, there's like certain key positions and mechanics you want to get with, like raising your elbow, having your elbow and hand in line, right? So, um, and there's form and technique. Um, it's a little bit more nuanced for aiming, because it's not like there's no physics involved in terms of like throwing a ball into a hoop. Like there's certain like
Hmm.
set physics and alignments and stuff. So a little bit more personalized with aiming, but that's where I could see people experimenting more with, is
Yeah.
to figure out, hey, well, I'm making certain misses to the right a little bit. Why is that? Like, it's happening every time. Well, if I angle my form a little bit differently or position it, it's going to shift the entire rotation, the angles of, so that might be a quick fix. So it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle of solving missed shots, missed errors, things that don't feel right.
Mm.
using the feedback from the game and in your sense to kind of work off of. And then um, yeah, so there's so many variables and factors, but if you put the time in, you really think about trying to problem solve your biomechanics, and then matching your sensitivity. Yeah, you can do it.
And when it comes to something like alignment, uh, what point did you realize that that was so important? Did you realize that as a player?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, like when I would compete and travel to tournaments, we were on picnic tables. We're on uh, just hotel chairs, all kinds of random setups. Some tables are way too high, so we'd have to stack two chairs, um, or tables that were too low, and we had to like physically slump over to get to it, the surface. So I noticed early on how just impactful that changed everything. So um, massive influence. So even if the chair's like 2 inches below than what you're used to, that you're practicing at home for months, that 2 inches you can like you set up and you're like something feels completely off. Like my sense is the same. Like what's going on? And so um, in a game where in FPS games where precision is everything, and missing by 5 or 10 pixels is kill or death every time. That 2 inches throws off all your alignments and your angles and your feelings. So
Yeah,
yeah, makes a huge difference.
yeah, that makes sense. And I guess that kind of ties into what a lot of people describe as like muscle memory. Is that a term that you use a lot?
Not anymore.
Yeah,
I've learned from Statespace that muscle memory is not it's not an actual term. I just use it because it's something that everyone can understand. The technical term is motor memory.
yeah,
So motor memory is there's like section of our brain that controls like our motor mechanics.
yeah,
Excuse me. So like if we need to draw something or throw something, part of our brain coordinates what that feels like in our hands and
yeah. It's like
how that
right over where
performs.
your headphones are sitting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was recently learned about that, but yeah, I'm a huge believer in that. I think to have consistency, you need to develop that kind of doing something over and over again. And then your body, your mind kind of, the more you do it, the more easy for me it is to replicate. Um, so I'm a big believer in it. I think there's definitely pro gamers. You can change your sense, you can change your mouse and still play fine.
Sure.
Um, Pro players do it all the time, but I think in order to get that true, like you play at 95%, but if you want to get to 100%, and if you stay with one thing, and you just repeat it over and over again, it's a small difference that I think matters. So big believer in consistency and repetition.
I think that that's a good way to phrase it too. Is like you can still be good changing those things and get to 95%, but to get to 100, it's important for consistency. Um, and so I'm also curious, like when you were a professional player, there weren't a such thing as like aim labs or Kovacs or any of these aim trainers. So like, what do you think is the value of aim trainers for players that might not use them or are kind of on the arguments of just playing the game might be the best way to improve their aim? Like, where do you think aim trainers fit into that?
I think aim trainers are useful because you can compact your training, um, and you can isolate your training as well. So there's certain aspects of your game you can work on specifically in these aim trainers because of where they're designed. So let's say my flicking is not that great in the y-axis or something, or x-y-axis, or maybe it's a certain spawn area, or maybe um, uh, yeah, so it's targeted, selective practice, because there's so many different types of game modes that you can, or tasks that you can train. Um, there's also like our aim labs, it gives you data feedback. So as soon as you finish a task, it tells you you missed more towards the left or more towards the right. Um, and it shows you graphs and data that you can actually see and see, okay, well, this is a fact. This is, factual stuff. So you get that real-time feedback. Um, I think in game, nothing beats in game in terms of like matching the feel because it's the game engine, it's the game you're supposed to play, but there's no data. And sometimes too, you don't get that isolation practice. Um, Aim trainers are also super helpful for beginners or intermediate players that haven't really developed that hand-eye coordination. Um, so when they go in a game, it's like, well, when I'm playing, you're not really practicing your aim. You're practicing playing the game. So you build your game sense, but how much aim training are you getting if you're just like walking around a map, not seeing anything, and there may be 10, 15 seconds where you're just holding an angle and there's nothing happening. So whereas an aim trainer, you could, in a minute, you're flicking and shooting 80, 90 times. So you get this like instant feedback, you see where you're missing and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to phrase it. And then when it comes to the things like isolating a specific aspect of aim, in your mind, how do you kind of break down aiming? Like, what are the subsections of aiming that you like to think of it as?
Um, I like to think about it in distances. So if you're aiming just a small box around the crosshair, it's what I call micromotion. So there's not much wrist or elbow or forearm involved, but just more of your hands and fingers, like precision stuff. And then beyond those micro box, it'd be what I call flicking. So just gradually building out from distances. So if you do 180s and stuff, it's what I call swiping, because now you have to aim beyond your wrist flicks, so you're using your forearm and elbow. And then there's vertical motion. So when you aim up and down, it's completely different biomechanics compared to flicking or swiping, which is naturally anatomically easier, like going left to right than is up and down, like shifting the whole elbow. And I think that's a huge differentiator. The X and Y axis of like tactical FPS shooters and like arena shooters. So for example, like CSGO and Valorant, most of the aiming work gets done in the X axis. So it's left to right, there's not much up and down. Whereas like Fortnite, Overwatch, Diabolical, it's like 50-50. You have to have just, amount of skill to look up and down. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's how I break down those motions. Yeah, it's like how to use your fingers and hands, how to use your wrists, and then how to use your elbow and forearm.
That's a good way to think of it. I like that you use the biomechanics of it to think of it. 'Cause that makes the most sense. And then when it comes to a player who says, I want to improve my aim, how would you recommend they figure out what aspect they need to improve on?
The first thing is your game of choice. So, whatever your game is, um, there's going to be certain aiming motions that you're going to need to perform. So yeah, if you play CSGO, there's 80% of aiming happens in the x-axis. Usually happens in like a 90-degree cone or range in front of you. Like you don't have to aim 180s and all the way to the right and left. It's just very there's like a cone you work with. So um, yeah, I mean, based off your game of choice, you'll need to know if you need higher sense or if you need to use more mouse pad space or not. So try to just work on those aiming motions, right? And your play style too. So, if you're like a aggressive entry style player, likes to go in first, and you need to be able to have a little bit snappier aim and clear a bunch of angles at once, compared to, let's say, a sniper or a lurker who plays more in the back, plays more at distance.
Mhm.
You don't need that kind of range of motion.
Right. Right. Okay. That makes sense. Um, and then I was also curious to hear your take. There's in the aim training community, there's a big versus battle of like what aim trainers are the best. Do you think that rather than saying one's better than another, some are better at specific aspects of aiming or training specific things, or do you prefer one aim trainer versus another?
To be honest, I haven't tried any other aim trainer to give an honest input other than AimLab. I tried Kovacs for a few minutes, and they've been out for longer than AimLab, so they've got more tasks, but it was kind of, for me, it was a little bit all over the place. There was just like too many, and I didn't really know what like playlist to go to. I know there's a lot of customization, which is cool. But AimLab, I work for them, so I know them in and out. And the data feedback that we provide, I feel like was better. And then the things we're working on is going to be, I mean, our goal is to be the best, most complete aim trainer out there. And I think we have the advantage of like, all the scientists and the data team and the programming. Um, so yeah, a little biased, but that's going to be our
Right.
goal. We want to be the, both training specifically for games or play styles, but also providing that feedback to help you determine how to improve your aim.
Yeah.
It's just not like you don't have to figure it out. We'll do it for you based off the facts.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that approach. I think Aim Labs has a lot of potential there for sure. Um, and then I'm curious, like aim training is kind of becoming almost like a trendy thing where a lot of people playing FPS games are almost putting too much emphasis on it. For those players, how would you what like I guess the question is why doesn't aim training all day every day not necessarily make you good in FPS games?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's aiming, there's mechanics, but then there's also game sense. So that's a whole different element of gaming that you have to have. So, um, making the right decisions at the right time, knowing when to take risk and rewards, knowing timings and rotations, how to support your teammates. There's there's the whole strategic side of it, the smartness, and that you can't learn from aim trainers. So, there's raw mechanics, aiming, and then there's the brain and aim, basically. So, um, yeah, you need both.
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned that nowadays there's a lot of resources for learning those other aspects, like watching like pro players, watching their own VODs, things like that. When people are trying to work on those other aspects of their FPS skills and they're watching, say, like a professional player and trying to learn from them, what do you think they should be watching for? Because I think it's important that they don't passively watch; they kind of actively look for stuff. So, what kind of things should they be like asking themselves or writing down?
I think you should be looking for things that they're doing that you're not. One of the ways I like to watch demos is I play along with them in real time. So as they're playing, I'm also pretending I'm in their situation and I'm thinking about what I would be doing every
Mhm.
second. So every second you play the game, your mind is updating new things or new ideas or solutions or options that you can do. So I think along with them. And then sometimes they do something differently than I wouldn't have. And that's something that I learned there. So you can work on your decision making like that. Um, and then just like the very basics, like you could steal strats, you can steal, these pro teams, if they're doing set executions or whatever, um, it's damn well that they spend a ton of time picking that one and figuring out the timing and where to throw the exact nades and everything, right? So that's you could just rip that one for one. Um, you could see how certain players are defending or playing certain positions on a map. So you could see, well, why are they picking this angle, or um, what do they do if someone rushes them? When are they finding their peak timings? Um, so you could go a little bit more granular in specific positions or roles. Um, yeah, so those are like the main things I look for. It's just really, really picking apart their gameplay. Not so you can watch the demos for like entertainment and fun, but
Right.
you could also watch it for studying, which is completely different mindset. Yeah.
And then I'm also curious what you think. Like a lot of people get to a certain level where they're maybe near the top ranks, and a lot of times they'll hit kind of like a skill plateau. Why do you think a lot of players kind of hit that plateau?
Um, I think this is a question I often get. A lot of players hit plateaus, especially as individual solo players. If you ever get to that point, that's when you should start looking for a team. That's where you could start developing a whole new area of game sense and experience. And when you do start playing with teams and organized scrims and matches, the environment and the pace and the quality of opposition is different. It's a whole new level. So, um, yeah, that would be the next transition or step for those players. Um, and if you still like, let's say you are on a team and you feel like you hit a plateau, um, it's kind of subjective. It's like the experience I had with complexity when we boot camped in Germany before Face It London Major. It was the opposite of a plateau. It was like, we're like we're under earth. Like it was like it was devastating. But through that experience, it's like sometimes you don't see one for one improvement as you're playing day by day. It happens over a period of time,
Yeah.
and it's like sneaky, and it's like you enter a tournament a few weeks later and you thought this whole time you're plateaued, but actually that whole time you're actually learning and like passively learning. You didn't know it. So I don't think you should try to look for that one for one improvement every day because it just doesn't happen like that.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. And it sounds like in that specific example, when you guys were in that boot camp, you were put up against like a pretty big challenge. Do you think just constantly being challenged is a big part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's good to get whooped. You need that. You need that check. You need something to drive you. Um, when things are easy, that's not the times when you grow. So yeah, definitely, just in general, like times I've grown the most or the challenges I've faced, that's has pushed me to strive to be better, and it's provided me a tons of new opportunities and experiences and um, growing, right? So
Yeah.
that analogy of when you work out, the purpose is to feel that pain and that kind of pushing yourself, and then you get stronger.
Yeah.
So um, a firm believer in that. You do need a challenge and push yourself and be welcoming to it, and then use those opportunities to learn from it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. That makes sense. Um, and I'm also curious then to hear a bit about, so there's in the aim training community, there's like advanced techniques and advanced ideas around how to kind of I guess push the plateau specifically around aiming. So if people are playing like an aim trainer all the time, they're trying to get even faster and the aim trainer's not working for them, they'll start looking for other methods to improve their skills. So like as an example, there's kind of like the idea of if you're shooting a basketball from the same position over and over again, you might get good at shooting it from that position. Um, but if you shoot it from different positions, you might develop your overall shooting skill a bit better. So some people use things like sensitivity randomizers or changing their sensitivity in order to improve an overall skill. They'll still use the same sensitivity in game, but they'll change it just in training. When it comes to something like that, like what do you think about that? What are the first thoughts that come to mind? Do you think that might be effective or
I've seen an article about that, how adjusting that variability forces you to adapt and adjust, which gives you new ways to use a tool like a mouse or an equipment instead of just the same repetition. Um, I think that specifically makes sense to beginners, where they haven't actually tried different ways to use an equipment or piece of tool. So that changing a sensitivity like a mouse forces them to use other parts of their arm or wrist or their grip, and it, um, that new forced adapting um, concept, I guess, makes sense in that aspect.
yeah.
I think the better you are and more skilled you are, I think there's um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a disproportionate or it scales downwards in improvement.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't give Michael Jordan a basketball that changes weight, right? Like if you're already at that level, you already, so there's a reverse curve to it, I guess. So it makes sense for beginners for sure. Um, I haven't tried it myself. Um, because like for me, I already like I'm happy with my aim. I'm already at where I need to compete. So there's no, I found my aiming formula is what I call it. I have my motor memory, my sense, my setup. So if I start tampering with that, it could put me in this downward spiral where now if I throw things off too much and I can't find my old feel again, it's devastating, right? Like all that work I've built up, it's thrown out the window. So yeah, I would say the better you are, stay away from it. But for beginners, I could see it working.
Okay, interesting. Do you think that there's any other like advanced tips or like crazy ideas that you've heard be thrown around in the community that you actually think might have potential?
Um, can you repeat that question again?
Like, are there any other like advanced training mechanisms that you may have heard theories about or that you maybe tried yourself?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of things. I would say the first thing is experiment with different alignments and positions. How much forearm is on the table, the angle of the forearm. There's all kinds of grips, claw grips, fingertip grips, overlap, palm grip, um, having different side pressures, um, having the ring finger and the pinky on the side of the mouse, or just the pinky. Uh, there's, how high or low you sit, um, how close your chest is to the table. Like all these factors, just not even talking about sensitivity or technique, they have a huge influence on, how you control the mouse, and the angles that are set, and how you perform the aiming motions.
Yeah.
So that's where I would say a lot of people can make improvements and optimizations. Um, I mean, and I would say just kind of high level blanket in-game sensitivity. It's like when you play the game and you're aiming at something, you know where the crosshair should go in your mind because you're trying to aim at that point. And if you're consistently missing one way or the other, you could use that as feedback. But um, yeah, so it's like you know where the crosshair is supposed to go. So use your trust your hand-eye coordination to kind of make the adjustments needed, whether that's to your body alignments, your sensitivity. And then the other big thing too is that again, because these body alignments are so important, if you're not able to consistently set up to your computer every time the same way every time to your mouse pad and your mouse, um, if I'm sitting 2 inches closer than yesterday, again, that throws off everything. And it feels like my sensitivity is different, although it's the same. So say work on that, work on the consistency of those positions, and then finding ones that could work for you.
Mm. And going along those lines, what would you say are maybe the best ergonomics or best uh, aiming positions for health and preventing injury?
Uh, I mean, posture is big. So, trying to prevent rolled forward shoulders, slouched back, S curve where your neck's kind of cocked upward. Um, so that's one. So I'm a firm believer in back posture braces.
Okay.
So um, shout out to Back Armor, shopbackarmor.com. It's when I use it. It's just like two backpack straps that you Velcro and tighten, and it forces your shoulders kind of in that healthy pack position instead of rolled forward. So it helps me. I wear it when I play because one, it keeps me in healthy positions, but two, it keeps me in consistent positions.
Uh,
Sometimes I could be slouching forward more than it just creeps, right? Like I get focused, it
yeah.
creeps, but I physically can't. So helps with that. Um, the other big thing too is that I mentioned my right shoulder. I still have like a minor tear that's never healed or something. So that's why I use this product. But if you have your like forearm on the table and you put too much downward pressure, like you're leaning too much on your forearm and hand, it puts stress right here.
Oh,
So yeah, try not. So I had really bad posture when I played back then. I'd rolled shoulder forward position, hunched back, and again, like probably like 20, 30 pounds, always constantly on this right arm and forearm because I was,
yeah.
leaning forward. So that's a huge one. So be careful of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good tip. Um, in terms of peripherals, how important do you think it is to have like god tier peripherals? Like, what do you think the role of that is?
Equipment's very important. I would say, frames per second is huge, so just a good CPU. In terms of like mouse, like if you stick with any of like the top five gaming companies, you should be all right. The thing is that you just want a quality sensor, um, the tracking system on the mouse. So generally, the top gaming companies they have some good, decent ones that can work with. So um, that's important. A gaming keyboard, um, faster input or less input lag. So as soon as you hit a button, it registers. There's also something called anti-ghosting. So like on non-game keyboards, if you hit more than like three or four, if you hold three or four keys down, um, anything after that won't register.
Oh,
So gaming keyboards, the good ones, you can hit every key on the keyboard and it would register.
yeah.
So something to watch out for. Really big in games where counter strafing is required, like CS:GO and Valorant, where as soon as you let go of a strafe key, you have to tap the opposite strafe key, and that half a millisecond is everything. So um, yeah, that and good microphone is huge. There's too many people out there. It's just like as soon as I hear them talk, can't even play the game. So being able to communicate with a decent mic is big time.
That makes sense. And what keyboard and mouse are you using?
I use the HyperX Alloy FPS keyboard. Um, yeah, that one is pretty good. I haven't tried more than like three or four in my career. I usually just get one until it breaks or something. I stick with it. But that one, it's been pretty good. Right now, I've been trying to do a few different mice. The ZA12 I love the ZA12 from Zowie. Logitech G Pro Wireless is a solid mouse. I just got this Zygen NP01 mouse by Vaxi. It's a brand new one. So those are the three I've been messing with.
Nice, nice. And what kind of mouse pad do you use? Do you use cloth or hard?
I use cloth. I in my earlier career, I tried all kinds of mouse pads. Um, oh man, we tried the steel pad. It was just like a flat rolled steel surface. Um, Played with that in some tournaments. Rat pad, which is like this just plastic pad. Funk pad, and it was a reversible mouse pad, so it had two different textures on both sides. Um, Used yeah, so and then now I stick with cloth pad. Um, but they all have their pros and cons. They all have like different surface frictions, and depending on your game and sense, they could be an advantage.
Who do you think would benefit the most from a hard versus cloth, as an example?
I think higher sensitivities will benefit from hard pads. Generally, they're not as big in size, so you're kind of forced to do that.
Mhm.
But the benefit of a hard pad is that because there's no fiber sticking out of it, like it's just a flat, hard, like waterproof material, the initial movement as soon as you move the mouse is super easy. There's no like initial resistance. So for micro distances like medium long range fights where you just barely have to move your mouse, it's like super clean. Um, they're a little bit more high maintenance because if like moisture gets on it, you have to have like a towel to wipe it off, or if there's a scratch, you'll feel it immediately.
Mhm.
So there's it's more high maintenance. Cloth pads are just great. It's more comfortable, lasts longer. The extra padding. There's on all kinds of different cloth pads too with different surface frictions. So there's ones that are like super slick, like hybrid style, or there's like K Sharp. He was one of the best aimers. He used like the same mouse pad for years, and it was like, I mean, it took a good amount of push just to move the mouse. So it was kind of grimy and it was like fibery, but it worked for him. So um, yeah, I think the crappy thing with mouse pads is that you don't know if it's good for you until you try it. Such a personalized feel.
Mhm.
So um, it's kind of the same with the mouse, unless you put your hands on it and you play it, that you don't actually know if it's good for you, which is the sucky part. So I would say, try to experiment with as much as you can. Unfortunately, we don't have gaming events and tournaments we could go to and just try out our friends or whoever's there.
Mhm.
But um, if you could go to an electronics store, if they have open box section, you could just put your hand on every mouse. That'll be great for you. And then, yeah, when events do pop up, yeah, just getting yourself out there, and just, going to the gaming booths, you could try everything they have. That way you could actually see for yourself, okay, well, I've tried, 15 mice, 5 pads. Now I can honestly say, okay, this out of all those is the best one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I like that perspective on mouse pads. I use a cloth mouse pad just because my hand sweats a lot, so I think that would be an issue with hard. But I also noticed that when I was in Korea, every time I went to a different like PC bong, they had different mouse pads and different mice, and that was like, I wish we had more of that here, because I tried out so many different mice and mouse pads there, and I feel like that's where I realized what mouse I like the most. So I wish we had more of that here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that
System.
about the culture there.
Yeah, you'd walk in and then they'd have a whole box and you could choose whatever you want. I know there's some big land centers in the States that have partnerships. They kind of
Cool.
have that. So, just look on Google and see what's available in your area. Just
Yeah,
give them a call. Be like, hey, what kind of equipment do you have to use?
cool.
That'll help with the shopping.
Yeah, is that more popular these days around the area that you live?
Yeah, there's some pretty established, well, like good quality land centers in my area for sure.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I think I guess that shocked me when I went to Korea, because where I live in Canada, it's pretty rare. I think I live relatively close to Toronto. There's maybe like two in Toronto, but the city where I am, no such thing as like a land center. So that was something that was really nice, that on every street corner I could go to a different one when I was in Korea. Kind of fun.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, yeah, there's literally one within like a baseball throw, wherever you went. So it was a cool thing about the culture is that esports is so embraced there. And when I went there too, I think they had like two dedicated channels for gaming. So there's always a StarCraft match or
Mhm.
something, some gaming replay to be seen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't wait to go back there once events are on again. It was really sad going to Lull Park there and then seeing that it was completely blocked off, and I don't know, it made me want to cry. But um, I'm also curious what games you're playing these days. Like, what do you have your attention on right now?
I'll be honest. I Ever since I joined Statespace about a month ago, I haven't played a game. I've just, the projects I'm working on, I'm putting all my energy and focus into it, my brain juice. So by the time I'm finished, I don't have any left to really focus on games. And I have a rule where I don't play matches or games if unless I'm at 80%, because, I only like to play ranked. So
Yeah,
I don't want to let my teammates down, and I just, it's much more enjoyable when I know I'm all there.
yeah,
And so, um, yeah, just enjoying my time at work. And then, when things settle down, I'll probably play Valorant. That's my game of choice right now. Yeah.
awesome. And I guess that reminds me of a question I like to ask a lot of people is what they think a person, like, let's say someone has all day long to play and they're very serious about their game. How many hours should they actually be playing the game before you think there might be like diminishing returns?
I think 3 hours is a good time to take a break. That was the same amount I used when I was coaching my teams. I generally see a drop off in focus level then. Um, So yeah, I would say 3 hours. We take a break for an hour, and if you're gonna go back for like another three, that's what we worked with. So yeah, I would just say every 3 hours. That's where I definitely see diminishing returns and focus level.
Yeah. Would you say that, like, at very max, do 6 total hours in a day, or do you think that people could do more than that if they have the time?
Yeah, I can. You can do more for sure. You got to throw in your food breaks, and just to let your brain cool down. So if you throw those in wise, or timely and selectively, some people, can go more than others. I guess it depends on your focus level and your energy, maybe your age. Um, so more or less, yeah, you could do three. I mean, you could technically do 12. I mean, there was days I would play 12 hours a day when I competed. So I just absolutely loved it. For me, it was never work. So I didn't want to take breaks. So I kind of had that in me. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say just like listen to your energy level, your mind, and your mood. Try not to focus playing if you don't want to, if you feel like you're a little burnt out, 'cause you generally never can play through it. Like you never play good when you're already you're already at like one minus 1 point when you start, right? So try not to force it when you know you shouldn't.
That makes sense. That's good advice. Um, I think that might just wrap it up for all of the questions and topics I wanted to kind of cover with you. But is there anything else that you'd want to kind of give advice to players who are aspiring to play professionally?
Yeah, yeah, just kind of the key things I mentioned in this interview. Um, Tons of resources out there to get better. The free ones are like VODs and demos. So learn from the pros. Watch your demos too. Sit back and watch with like you know, um, when you play, it's very difficult to know in real time where you messed up. But if you can just sit back with the, bird's eye view and really pick apart your game, you see things that you don't notice when you play. So demos and VODs, try to create a routine and schedule to create some consistency so you have some balance in your life, but also efficiency in terms of like how you use your practice time. So it's not necessarily how much time, but how you use your time. If you're aspiring players looking to join a team, try to work on yourself out of the game as well as your in game. So doing things that to be a good teammate and someone that people want to be around, sponsors want to represent. So trying to work on that ego, trying to be more professional, trying to mature a little bit, if you can. Um, I would say in terms of like your mechanics, it's problem solving. It's figuring out using your hand-eye coordination and your intuition to just use that feedback of make the fixes or tweaks you need to make in terms of sense or small little body alignments and adjustments. Um, oh, another thing too is if you're in a team and you're trying to join another team, I have a video called Gaming Resume. So I would highly recommend using that template that I have or some variation, and that's really gonna shortcut your process in finding a team. So if you can just send a file to a team or a coach or an IGL, like here's my times available, here's my experience, here's the spots I want. Not only does it ensure that um, not only do you save time because you can just send that the link to everyone, you can spam it essentially, but
Mm.
two, if they have all that information, then it's the right team for you. Because you also don't want to just join a team for the sake of joining a team. It needs to be the right fit for you and them
Uh,
to have a success in sticking around in the long run. Um, so I would say that. Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you for you gave so much wisdom in the past. It's almost been like 2 hours. So thank you for your time, first of all. Thank you for all the lessons. And thank you for kind of inspiring me as well. I love hearing about your career, and I'm obviously very passionate about esports, and not sure how familiar you are with our channel, but we always love to just work on like how to help people become professional, and that's helping people is something that I think we both love to do. So it was really cool to chat with someone like-minded.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I've checked out your channel. Like the work you're doing. You guys been around longer than I have, so yeah, I mean, I think it's fun being in this kind of new space where we see just rapid growth in esports and the competitive scene. So, doing what we can to help it grow. Um, yeah, and it was my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, dude, I hope I get to talk to you soon, and maybe eventually I can get decent enough at Valorant that I can play with you.
Yeah, yeah, or maybe we'll meet in Korea or something sometime, and we'll have some
Sounds
soju.
good. That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. All right. Well, for now, thank you again, and take care. Now, this conversation made me feel super inspired, not only right after the conversation, but for days afterwards. So definitely check out everything Ron Rambo Kim has to offer, from his social media, his YouTube channel, and even his FPS course. And if you guys feel that this conversation has enough value to help impact someone's career within esports, then I recommend sharing it. Now, I imagine that you don't usually just tweet stuff out or share stuff on Discord or even share stuff on Reddit, but if you do that and it has the kind of impact that it had on me or perhaps on you, then you might be able to alter someone's career in a completely new way. So definitely consider the idea of sharing this conversation and see if you can help to impact someone's path in esports. But of course, as always, I hope you guys keep on grinding and keep on improving, and I'll see you all in the next video.